Hi, welcome to Unit 1.1, Atomic Structure and Components. This is the first lesson in Unit 1, Atoms and Nuclear Chemistry. So before we begin in today's lesson, I want to sort of give you a brief overview of what you'll be covering in Unit 1. In Unit 1, there are sort of 5 subtopics that are shown here. The first 3 involve atoms. So you'll be learning about atoms, what they are composed of, properties or characteristics of atoms, and how to represent them. And then the last 2 subtopics, we go into nuclear chemistry. Now, the reason why these 2 things are linked together is because the knowledge that you gain about the structure and the components of atoms and its properties and atomic representations can then be applied to nuclear chemistry. So that's why these 2 things sort of go hand in hand. We are going to start with the first subtopic, which is learning about the composition and structures of atoms. Now, for many of you, this will be review, but maybe there will be some things that you haven't thought about in a while, so good review is always helpful, or you haven't thought about it in a certain way. That will be useful here. So let's begin with what we know about atoms. Remember, we said atoms are the basic building blocks of matter, and we know that all matter are made of atoms. So if you break matter apart, you will find atoms. So let's think about this in another way. If you take a bar of gold and you keep cutting that bar of gold in half until you can't cut it anymore, what you're going to have left is an atom of gold. So that's one way that you can describe what an atom is. But I want to be really clear about this, because actually atoms are made up of even smaller particles called subatomic particles. So technically, if you had a huge amount of energy, you could technically split that atom into the subatomic particles that the atom is made of. However, if you were to take an atom of gold and split it into its subatomic particles, it will no longer be considered gold. Okay, it's no longer gold. So the key thing is that an atom is the smallest unit of matter that retains the properties or the characteristic of that matter. So as we're talking about atoms, it's also important to keep in mind that there are more than just atoms of gold, right? They're all different sorts of atoms, and you can find those, of course, on your periodic table of elements. All right, and so here are a few that you can read as they pop up on the screen. There are 118, but here are a few I'm just sort of pointing out where they are in the periodic table. So if you have all these different types of atoms, well, what's going to distinguish an atom of gold, let's say, from an atom of copper, right? How do you distinguish the two? Or an atom of copper from an atom of oxygen? Okay, so we're going to need to know what are the characteristics or properties of each atom that make an atom of gold, gold, and an atom of copper, copper. But before we get into that, we first must learn about the particles, the subatomic particles that make up atoms, and how those subatomic particles are arranged, because then we can use that knowledge later to learn about the characteristics that make an atom of gold, gold, for example. Okay, so let's talk about these subatomic particles and the structures of atoms. There are 3 subatomic particles, protons, neutrons, and electrons. Now, you must know not only the names of these subatomic particles, but there's some other things you need to know about subatomic particles as well. You need to know where they're located in the atom, and we'll look at the structure of an atom in a moment. You need to know their mass. You need to know their electric charge, right? So electronic charge. So these are the 3 main things you need to know in addition to the names is where is the particle located in an atom, what's the mass of that particle, and what's the charge. And all atoms have these subatomic particles, okay? They just will be in different ratios or quantities. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pause and you're going to watch a clip of this video by DeWitt where he discusses the basic atomic structure. And then we're going to come back together and summarize and take some notes.